The morning sun cast long shadows across the wheat fields of New Geneva as Lisa Park walked toward the communication center. She had been the colony administrator for 3 years now, and every morning brought the same peaceful routine. 50,000 humans called this place home, scattered across the valleys and hills of Kepler 442c. Children played in the streets while their parents worked the farms that fed half the outer colonies. Lisa loved mornings like this. The air smelled clean, carrying the scent of growing grain and morning coffee from the settlement kitchens. In 2 hours, she would send the daily report to Earth Command. Population stable, crops growing well. No problems to report. She never got the chance to send that message. The first sign of trouble came from Tommy Garcia, the young communications officer who monitored space traffic. He burst through the door of the admin building, his face pale and sweating. "Ma'am, we have ships coming in. Big ones. They're not responding to our calls." Lisa followed him to the communications center, where the detection screens showed 5 massive vessels dropping out of hyperspace. They were unlike anything in the human fleet database. The ships looked organic, like giant insects made of dark metal and strange curves. "Try again," Lisa ordered. "All frequencies." Tommy worked the controls with shaking hands. "Unknown vessels. This is New Geneva Colony Control. Please identify yourselves and state your business." The response came in perfect English, but the voice sounded wrong. Too many clicking sounds like insects talking. "Human settlement. UCOR. Will surrender all defensive positions. You will gather your population in the main square. You will comply immediately." Lisa felt ice form in her stomach. "Tommy, get me Commander Jake Morrison on the patrol channel. Emergency frequency." The young man's fingers flew over the controls. After long seconds, a crackling voice came through. "New Geneva, this is Commander Morrison aboard the UHS Defiance. We're 3 days out. What's your situation?" "Jake, we have 5 unknown vessels demanding surrender. They want us to give up our defenses and gather everyone in the square." "Negative, Lisa. Do not comply. We're burning hard toward your position. Can you hold out?" Lisa looked at the screens again. The alien ships were moving into orbit, positioning themselves over the colony. "I don't think we have a choice, Jake. These ships are huge. Our missile batteries wouldn't even scratch them." The alien voice crackled over the comm again. "You have 10 minutes to begin compliance. Resistance means extinction for your species on this world." Lisa grabbed the microphone. "We need time to organize our people. We're civilians here, mostly farmers and their families. Time is not given. Compliance is required." She could hear children playing outside the building, their laughter carrying through the morning air. Her own daughter was probably in school, right now learning about Earth history. Lisa made her decision. "Tommy, open a channel to the whole colony. Emergency broadcast." The young officer nodded and switched to the colony-wide frequency. Lisa took a deep breath. "This is Administrator. Park to all residents of New Geneva. We have unknown vessels in orbit demanding our surrender. I want everyone to remain calm and return to your homes immediately. Parents, collect your children from school. This is not a drill." She closed the channel and looked at Tommy. "Now get me that patrol ship again." "Commander Morrison here. Lisa, what are you doing?" Lisa watched the screens as the alien ships began launching smaller craft toward the surface. Hundreds of them, like drops of black rain falling from orbit. "Jake, they're landing troops. We can't fight this. We're going to try to keep our people alive until help arrives." She paused, watching the landing craft streak through the atmosphere. Unknown ships in orbit. They're demanding complete surrender, sending coordinates of our defensive positions. They say resistance means extinction. The communication screen flared with static as something hit the building. Through the window, Lisa could see the first alien troops moving through the streets. They were tall and thin, covered in dark armor that made them look like walking nightmares. Some of the colonists were running, but most were following her orders and gathering in their homes. "Ma'am," Tommy whispered, "they're jamming our long-range communications. I can barely hold the connection to Commander Morrison." Lisa grabbed the microphone one last time. "Jake, if you can still hear me, tell Earth Command what happened here. Tell them the coordinates. Tell them we tried." The building shook again and the lights went out. Through the window, Lisa could see alien soldiers herding groups of colonists toward the main square. Some people were crying, others were helping. Elderly neighbors walk. The door burst open and 3 of the insect-like aliens entered the room. Up close, they were even more terrifying. Their heads were covered by helmets that looked like metal skulls, and their weapons hummed with strange energy. One of them spoke in that clicking, unnatural voice. "You are the leader of this settlement." It wasn't a question. Lisa stood as straight as she could. "I am the administrator, yes. You will order your people to work. Those who work live. Those who resist die. Those who try to escape die. You understand these rules?" Lisa looked at Tommy, who was still at his communication station. The boy was maybe 19 years old, fresh from Earth and full of dreams about frontier life. Now he looked like he might be sick. "I understand," she said quietly. "Good. Your people will mine the rare metals below this world. They will work until the job is finished. Then we will leave." "How long will that take?" The alien tilted its head in a way that made Lisa's skin crawl. "Perhaps years, perhaps decades. Time is not important. Only the work matters." Over the next few hours, Lisa watched her peaceful colony transform into something from a nightmare. The aliens, who called themselves the Scarix, organized the humans into work groups. Families were split up. Men and women were sent to different mining sites. Children were kept in the settlement as insurance against rebellion. By evening, Lisa found herself in a small room in what used to be the school. Through the window, she could see the lights of the mining operations starting up. The Scarix worked fast and efficiently, like they had done this many times before. Tommy was in the room with her, along with about 20 other people the aliens had identified as leaders or potential troublemakers. Lisa recognized most of them. There was Dr. Murphy, who ran the medical clinic, Sam Johnson, who managed the farming cooperatives, and Maria Santos, who taught at the high school. "What do we do now?" Tommy asked quietly. Lisa looked out at the lights of the mines, then up at the alien ships still hanging in orbit like dark stars. Somewhere out there, Commander Morrison was racing toward them with one small patrol ship. Somewhere beyond that, Earth would eventually learn what had happened to New Geneva. "We survive," she said. "We stay alive, and we wait for help to come." She didn't know if help would come in days, weeks, or years. But she knew one thing about humans that the Scarix had not yet learned. They were very good at staying alive when everything seemed hopeless, and they were even better at remembering who had hurt them. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UHS Defiance, staring at the empty space where New Geneva should have been responding to his calls. 3 days had passed since Lisa Park's last transmission, and the silence felt like a weight pressing down on his chest. "Anything on the scanners, Lieutenant?" he asked. Bobby Chen, his sensor officer, shook his head. "Still nothing, sir, but we're picking up a lot of metal debris in orbit. Looks like ship parts." Jake's jaw tightened. "Human ship parts?" "No, sir. These pieces are different. The metal composition doesn't match anything in our database. The Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, and what Jake saw made his blood run cold. New Geneva was still there, but it was wrong. Massive strip mines scarred the landscape like open wounds. Strange structures rose from the ground, connected by bridges and tubes that looked more grown than built. And hanging in orbit above it all were 5 alien ships that looked like metal insects. "Get me a secure channel to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "Priority Alpha." It took several minutes for the message to reach Earth and the response to come back. When Admiral Kate Sullivan's face appeared on the screen, Jake could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had been dealing with this crisis for 3 days, fielding reports from the Defiance and trying to get help from the Galactic Coalition. "Commander Morrison, what's your status?" "Admiral, the colony is still there, but it's been completely taken over. The aliens have turned the entire settlement into some kind of mining operation. I can see human figures working in the dig sites, but I can't tell how many are still alive." Admiral Sullivan's expression hardened. "We've been trying to get coalition support for a rescue mission. The response has been disappointing. Jake had heard rumors about the Coalition's attitude toward human colonies. Most of the alien species considered humans to be violent primitives who had somehow stumbled into space travel. They were tolerated as junior members, but rarely taken seriously. "What are your orders, Admiral?" "Hold position and gather intelligence. We're mobilizing every ship we can find, but it's going to take time." After the transmission ended, Jake spent the next day watching the alien operation through long-range sensors. What he saw made him sick. Humans were being worked like animals, hauling massive loads of ore from deep mines. When someone collapsed from exhaustion, the alien guards would simply drag them away. Jake never saw those people again. Lieutenant Chen worked around the clock, recording everything. "Sir, I'm picking up communication signals from the surface. It looks like the aliens are coordinating with ships throughout their territory. This isn't just a mining operation. It's part of something bigger." "What do you mean?" "These aliens, they call themselves the Scarix. Near as I can tell, they've been doing this to other species for decades. Whole planets turned into slave camps." Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. "And the Coalition knows about this?" "They have to, sir. The Scarix have been operating in Coalition space for years." 2 days later, the reinforcements began to arrive. First came Captain Ryan Torres aboard the heavy cruiser UHS Vengeance. Jake had served with Ryan before, and he knew the man's reputation. Torres didn't believe in taking prisoners when it came to slavers and pirates. "Jake, good to see you," Torres said over the communication link. "Fill me in on what we're dealing with." Jake transmitted all the sensor data he had collected. 47,000 humans still alive as far as we can tell. They're spread across 6 different mining sites with the main compound in what used to be New Geneva. Any sign of Lisa Park? Negative. The aliens seem to have the leadership separated from the general population. More ships arrived over the next few hours. The patrol cruiser UHS Guardian brought Marine Colonel Danny Rodriguez and 2 companies of soldiers. The supply ship UHS Liberty carried enough ammunition and supplies for a long campaign. But it was the arrival of Admiral Sullivan herself that really changed the mood. The UHS Retribution dropped out of hyperspace like an avenging angel. The massive dreadnought was the pride of the human fleet, bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. When Admiral Sullivan's image appeared on the main screen, Jake could see the fury burning in her eyes. "Gentlemen, we have a problem," she began. "The Galactic Coalition has decided that New Geneva is not worth starting a war over. They've suggested we file a formal complaint and let their diplomatic corps handle negotiations." Colonel Rodriguez spoke up from his position on the Guardian. "Ma'am, with respect, how long do those negotiations usually take?" The Coalition representative estimated between 5 and 10 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Captain Torres broke it. "Admiral, we can't leave those people down there for 10 years. I agree completely, Captain, which is why we're not going to wait for Coalition approval." Jake felt his heart begin to race. "Ma'am, are you saying what I think you're saying?" Admiral Sullivan's smile was cold as winter. "I'm saying that sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. The Coalition might not care about human lives, but we do." Over the next hour, more ships continued to arrive. Word had spread through the human fleet faster than official channels could carry it. Captains were making their own decisions, abandoning patrol routes and scheduled missions to converge on Kepler 442c. The merchant captain Alice Walker brought her cargo hauler, the Free Trader, fitted with missile pods welded to her hull. "I've got supplies for the Marines and a crew that knows how to fight," she announced. Commander Steve Blake arrived with the reconnaissance ship UHS Shadow, carrying a team of intelligence specialists. "We've been monitoring Scarix communications throughout their territory. They're not expecting any kind of resistance." "What do you mean?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "Ma'am, according to their transmissions, they've never encountered a species that fights back effectively. Most civilized races prefer to negotiate or file complaints with the Coalition. The Scarix have been operating unopposed for decades." Jake thought about that for a moment. The Coalition species were generally peaceful, preferring diplomacy and trade to warfare. Their ships were built for exploration and commerce, not battle. Human ships, on the other hand, were designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. "How many ships do they have in orbit?" Torres asked. 5 capital ships plus maybe 30 smaller vessels for transport and mining support, Blake replied. "But sir, there's something else. They're not built for combat. These are industrial ships, designed for mining and cargo transport." Admiral Sullivan leaned back in her chair. "So we have a fleet of warships facing a group of mining vessels." "Yes, ma'am. But they have our people." The Admiral nodded grimly. "Then we're going to get our people back." As the human fleet continued to grow, Jake watched more and more ships arrive. Some were military vessels, sleek and deadly. Others were converted civilian ships, armed with whatever weapons their crews could find. But all of them carried the same message. Humanity was done asking for permission. "Admiral," Jake said quietly, "the Coalition isn't going to like this." Kate Sullivan looked at the tactical display showing nearly 300 human ships gathering in space. "Commander, the Coalition had their chance to help. They chose politics over human lives. Now they're going to learn what happens when you push Deathworlders too far." The human fleet hung in space like a pack of wolves waiting to strike. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UHS Retribution, watching the tactical display that showed nearly 300 ships in perfect formation. Each captain knew their role. Each crew was ready for what came next. "Admiral," Lieutenant Amy Watson called from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from the Scarix command ship." "Put it through." The main screen flickered and an alien face appeared. The Scarix looked like a nightmare made real, with multiple eyes that glowed with strange light and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the clicking sounds made Sullivan's skin crawl. "Human fleet, you are in violation of Scarix territorial claims. Withdraw immediately or face consequences." Sullivan stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back. "I am Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Human Defense Fleet. You are holding 50,000 human civilians as slaves. Release them immediately." Alien's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Your species does not have authority here. The humans on this world are property of the Scarix hegemony. They will work until their purpose is served. You have 30 seconds to begin releasing human prisoners," Sullivan said quietly. "After that, we start killing you all." The Scarix commander tilted its head. "You threaten us? Your small fleet against the might of the hegemony? We have conquered dozens of worlds. Your primitive species cannot stand against us." Sullivan smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "We're about to find out." The alien began to speak, again probably about consequences and the power of their empire. Sullivan didn't let it finish. "Fire." The word was spoken quietly, but it carried across every communication channel in the human fleet. What happened next had never been seen in the history of galactic warfare. The UHS Retribution's main guns opened up first. Massive particle beams lanced across space, designed to punch through the armor of enemy dreadnoughts. The Scarix command ship's shields flared and died in less than 2 seconds. The beams cut through the alien vessel's hull like it was made of paper. Captain Ryan Torres aboard the UHS Vengeance watched his targeting computer lock onto 3 Scarix cruisers. "All weapons full spread," he ordered. His ship's missile tubes emptied their entire load in one devastating salvo. 60 missiles streaked toward the enemy ships, each one carrying enough explosive power to level a city block. The Scarix had never faced weapons like these. Their shields were designed to stop the precise energy-efficient weapons that civilized species used in their rare conflicts. But humans didn't believe in efficiency when it came to war. They believed in overwhelming firepower. Commander Jake Morrison, still aboard the UHS Defiance, targeted one of the smaller Scarix vessels. His ship was old and not heavily armed, but he made every shot count. "Target their engines," he told his weapons officer. "I want them dead in space." The Scarix tried to fight back, but their weapons were designed for intimidation and crowd control, not ship-to-ship combat. Their energy beams struck human shields that had been built to withstand the worst the galaxy could throw at them. The human ships barely slowed down. On the converted merchant ship Free Trader, Captain Alice Walker watched her improvised missile pods empty their loads. "That's for Lisa Park and every other human down there," she muttered. The space battle lasted exactly 11 minutes. When it was over, burning debris from 85 Scarix ships drifted through space like a funeral pyre. Not one alien vessel had escaped to carry word of their defeat. But the real fight was just beginning. Colonel Danny Rodriguez stood in the cargo bay of his transport, looking at 200 Marines who were about to drop into hell. These were volunteers from across human space, men and women who had signed up the moment they heard about New Geneva. "Listen up," Rodriguez shouted over the noise of the engines. "We're going down there to get our people back. Intel says the Scarix have separated the colonists into work groups across 6 different mining sites. We hit them all at once, fast and hard." Sergeant Lisa Brown, one of the squad leaders, raised her hand. "Sir, what about civilian casualties?" "Our people are tough," Rodriguez replied. "They've survived 3 months of slavery. They'll survive a little rescue operation. Just make sure you know who you're shooting at." The Marines loaded into drop pods, modified cargo containers that could punch through atmosphere and deliver troops directly to the battlefield. It was a human innovation that terrified other species, who preferred slow, careful landings with proper escorts. Rodriguez strapped himself into his own pod and opened the communication channel. "All units, this is Colonel Rodriguez. We're going. In hot. Remember, no Scarix survivors. These things enslaved our people, and we don't negotiate with slavers." The drop pods launched from a dozen different ships, streaking through the atmosphere like meteors. From the ground, they must have looked like the end of the world. Rodriguez's pod hit the ground outside what used to be New Geneva's main square, now converted into a slave processing center. He kicked open the door and stepped out into chaos. Scarix guards were running everywhere, trying to organize some kind of defense. They had never faced an enemy that came from the sky like avenging angels. The Marine combat armor made each soldier look like a metal giant. Their weapons were designed to stop the biggest, nastiest predators that Earth had ever produced. Against the Scarix guards, they were devastating. "Alpha Squad, secure the processing center," Rodriguez ordered. "Bravo Squad, hit the guard towers. Charlie Squad, find our people and get them to safety." The battle for New Geneva was brutal and one-sided. The Scarix had ruled through fear and intimidation, but they had never fought soldiers who were professionally trained to kill everything that threatened them. Sergeant Brown kicked down the door to what looked like a prison building. Inside, she found 30 human colonists locked in cages barely big enough for animals. They looked up at her with eyes that had lost all hope. "U.S. Marines," she announced. "We're here to get you out." One of the prisoners, an older man with gray hair, started to cry. "Are we really going home?" "Yes, sir," Brown replied, cutting through the lock on his cage. "We're all going home." At the main mining complex, another squad of Marines found something that made their blood boil. A group of human children, some as young as 8 years old, were being used to crawl into narrow mine shafts that adults couldn't reach. The Scarix guards had been using electric prods to force them into the tunnels. The Marines didn't take any prisoners at that site. Back in what used to be the school, Lisa Park heard the sound of human weapons and human voices. She had spent 3 months planning for this moment, organizing the surviving colonists and preparing for the day when help would finally come. When the Scarix guards tried to use the human leaders as hostages, they discovered something important about their prisoners. The helpless humans had spent months preparing weapons from mining equipment and industrial tools. They had been waiting for the right moment to strike back. The moment came when Sergeant Tommy Garcia, now wearing Marine armor, kicked down the door to their prison. "Ma'am," he said to Lisa Park, "Admiral Sullivan sends her regards." Lisa smiled for the first time in 3 months. "Tell the Admiral that New Geneva is ready to go home." As the sun set over Kepler 442c, the last Scarix stronghold fell to the human assault. The rescue was complete, but more importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about the species from the little blue planet. Humans didn't just fight wars. They erased their enemies from existence. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council was unlike anything in their 1,000-year history. Representatives from 47 different species sat in stunned silence as they watched the recordings from Kepler 442c. On the main screen, human warships reduced an entire alien fleet to burning scrap in less than 12 minutes. Ambassador Marcus Webb stood at the center of the chamber, his hands folded calmly behind his back. Around him, alien delegates whispered in their various languages, all saying the same thing in different ways. They were afraid. The human fleet engaged in an unprovoked attack, declared the representative from Altair Prime, a tall blue creature with too many arms. This violation of coalition law cannot be ignored. Webb turned slowly to face the speaker. Unprovoked? The Scarix enslaved 50,000 human civilians. They turned children into mine workers. They executed anyone who resisted. And you call our response unprovoked? The Centauri delegate, a being that looked like a walking crystal, spoke next. The proper channels exist for resolving such disputes. Violence should be the last resort, used only after diplomatic solutions have been exhausted. How long do those diplomatic solutions usually take? Webb asked quietly. The standard timeline for slavery arbitration is 7 to 10 years, the crystal being replied. Webb smiled, and every alien in the chamber felt a chill run down their spine. 7 to 10 years. While human children worked themselves to death in alien mines. While families were torn apart and people were worked until they collapsed. 7 to 10 years. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the translation. Devices. Let me make something very clear to all of you, Webb continued. Humanity joined this coalition in good faith. We followed your rules, respected your customs, and tried to be good neighbors. But we will not watch our people suffer while you debate and form committees. The delegate from Vega, a creature that looked like an oversized insect, clicked its mandibles nervously. The human response was excessive. Surely the complete destruction of the Scarix fleet was unnecessary. Webb's expression didn't change. Excessive? We haven't even started. The recording shifted to show footage from the surface of Kepler 442c. Human Marines moved through the mining complexes like avenging spirits, their weapons cutting down any Scarix that stood in their way. The aliens in the chamber watched their fellow beings die without mercy or hesitation. This is what happens when you threaten human families, Webb said. This is what happens when you turn our children into slaves. This is what happens when you mistake our civilization for weakness. Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice echoed through the chamber as the recording played her final transmission to the Scarix Queen. You have 30 seconds to begin releasing human prisoners. After that, we start killing you all. The coalition delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had never heard such cold fury in a diplomatic communication. 3 days later, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Pirate attacks on human shipping routes had stopped completely. Slaver vessels were giving human colonies a wide berth. The criminal organizations that had been operating with impunity in coalition space were suddenly very careful about which ships they targeted. Captain Ryan Torres stood on the bridge of the UHS Vengeance, reading the latest intelligence reports. His ship was patrolling the outer rim, watching for any sign of retaliation against human settlements. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a distress signal from the mining station at Beta Centauri. They say they're under attack by unknown vessels. Torres was about to order his ship to investigate when another message came through. Never mind, sir. The attackers are withdrawing. They say they didn't realize there were humans on the station. Torres smiled grimly. Word was spreading fast. On Earth, Admiral Sullivan addressed the assembled fleet commanders in the war room, beneath Geneva. The holographic display showed human space and the surrounding systems, with friendly territories marked in blue and potential threats in red. Gentlemen and ladies, she began, the galaxy has learned something important about us in the past week. They've learned that we're not the primitive savages they thought we were. We're something much worse. The assembled officers listened intently as Sullivan continued. We're apex predators who chose to be civilized. We built a society based on protecting the weak and defending our families. But when someone threatens what we love, we remember what we really are. Commander Jake Morrison, now promoted to captain for his role in the New Geneva operation, raised his hand. "Admiral, what about coalition sanctions?" "They're talking about expelling humanity from the Alliance." Sullivan's laugh was cold. "Let them try. Half their trade routes run through human space. Their exploration vessels depend on human-built engines. Their colonies buy human food and medicine. They need us more than we need them." She gestured to the display, which now showed shipping routes and trade agreements. "Besides, do you really think they want to make enemies of a species that can wipe out an entire fleet in 12 minutes? The meeting ended with new deployment orders. Human fleets would be stationed at key points throughout the galaxy, not just protecting human interests, but serving as a reminder to anyone who might have ideas about testing humanity's resolve. Lisa. Park stood in the rebuilt town square of New Geneva, watching children play where slave pens had been only weeks before. The colony was healing, but slowly. Some of the scars would never fully fade. Dr. Carl Murphy, who had treated the freed slaves, approached her with a medical report. "The physical injuries are healing well," he said, "but the psychological trauma will take years to overcome." Lisa nodded, watching a group of children who still flinched at sudden noises. "What about the families that lost people?" "We're building a memorial wall with the names of everyone who didn't make it home. It should be finished next week." The memorial, when completed, bore a simple inscription that became famous throughout human space. "They died as slaves, so others could live free. Never again." But it was the second inscription, added later, that really caught the galaxy's attention. "Here lie the enemies of humanity. Let their fate be remembered by all who would threaten our people." Ambassador Webb returned to his quarters after another long day of coalition meetings. The other delegates were still trying to figure out how to respond to humanity's display of force. Some wanted sanctions, others wanted to negotiate. A few, the smart ones, wanted to strengthen their alliance with the humans. His communication terminal chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Sullivan. "Marcus, how are they taking the news?" Webb smiled as he composed his reply. "They're scared, Kate. Really scared. For the first time in coalition history, they've seen what happens when a Deathworld species gets angry." "Good," came the reply. "Fear keeps people honest." The message continued. "We've had 3 more slavery operations surrender without a fight, when they heard human ships were coming. The Orion Cartel just announced they're ceasing all operations in human space, and the Vegan Trade Federation wants to renegotiate their shipping contracts with more favorable terms for us." Webb laughed. It was amazing how quickly the galaxy could change its attitude when faced with superior firepower. 6 months after the Battle of Kepler 442c, as historians were already calling it, the galaxy had settled into a new normal. Human space was larger and more secure than ever before. The coalition had quietly amended its charter to include stronger protections for member species. And throughout known space, a new phrase had entered common usage. "Don't anger the Deathworlders." It was advice that most species took very seriously.